You're good on the front.
How are you on your side? Good.
Got lots of room over there.
Yep. Up against. Alright. Well, you can just put the bungee straps or ratchet strap to hold it up like that. Yep. Cut it hard. Yep. 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 Come a little more if you want. That's good. That's good. Perfect. Okay. Good here. I'm gonna drop again. Yeah. Probably take the boards out.
And you need it because the back will drag.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt. All right.
Good. You're down on the floor.
Making a mess in the new shop. Rusty junk. I was gonna just spin it around and we can put it. Well, I think I'm gonna move that car eventually once we're further along. Making room, all right? Put it in metal.
So you can get cars out of both sides.
That's kind of my thought. Maybe that was quad. They only put a new one in it in 2015, so it wasn't even like it was old. So who knows? But I put that on and everything was good.
You have filters in there? You have water filters in there?
Yeah, not yeah, because it's right at the gate, the meter.
Stand still.
Okay. It's right at the meter, and then it's the pressure regulator. So it very well could have gotten junk in.
That isn't the townships?
I don't think the meter is.
Yeah, I thought everything.
Yeah, they work for that twin. They have the mark on the out there. I just want to include the 8. Oh, are they? Okay. Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage. And today we're going to start working on the DeLorean Roadster again. So in the last couple of videos, we were pretty much doing disassembly. Behind the scenes, we've been working on getting the parts gathered together and cleaned up. So Mike has been dipping in our Evapor Rust, dipping a bunch of our small parts, getting them in primer. Also in the meantime, I had my buddy Brooke, who does a lot of my blasting for me. He fit this frame into one of his blasting weekends, and he got the frame all blasted. We sprayed it with Eastwood Fast Etch. Has a bunch of white spots on it because as we were trailering it from this building upstairs, it started sprinkling rain, so the white is actually the acid that was kind of resisting the water. But anyways, we got the frame together. I want to quick show you guys some of the stuff on the frame, and then I'm going to work on getting some of the repairs done and getting this thing prepped so we can start working on making the frame a roller again. All right, so we'll start at the front of the frame and we'll start to work our way back. I'll show a couple of the points of interest on this thing. So front horns on this thing are actually in decent shape. They did not get too rusted or pitted. They're not damaged or super bent up, so that's nice. Front cross member here, this is super common. This cross member at some point somebody repaired. They put a plate in the top of this. I'm wondering if that is because maybe the cross member did the typical crack here, or they maybe just wanted to strengthen it. Still has the original front mounts for the 32 style mounts in the front, but then you can see this thing has had engine mounts in numerous spots. So the original ones would be here. There's another plate here with engine mounts on either side, and then finally there is some plates here that are gusseted. So it's kind of interesting that this car had I think a few different types of flatheads in it. We can't really tell that there was an overhead valve engine in it at any point. We talked to Jack DeLorean. He didn't remember there ever being one in it when he owned it. So I'm just wondering if it's the different types of flatheads and mounts that were used. Obviously the original ones are obvious. Possibly some of these were just where the engine was set in the engine bay. The K-member is essentially not modified as far as where the transmission would bolt up. So nothing here is kind of telling me that it had a different engine and trans setup or anything that was different than bolting up like stock back at the transmission. You can see that one leg of the K-member has been modified pretty heavily. So this was actually torched out in here, and I had to cut this little piece here because the way they did it, they like assembled the pedals in this hole, and they just cut a notch to just kind of fit the pedal through, and they put everything together. When I went to take it apart, the pedals were obviously all rusty and we couldn't get that center pin out. So I decided to cut this top here so that it's easier to service. So what I'm going to do is actually, in this video, be working on making, taking that piece that we cut out and make it so that it bolts in. So it'll still be you know, strong in there and won't close up, but it'll actually be a bolt-in piece. In here they put a notch in and boxed it in on the K-member leg, and basically that's so that the pedal would kind of slide and fall in there. I think it had like 39 style pedals in it, so the pedal, so that it could sink down in there when you push the clutch or the brake in. That worked. I guess this would be the clutch. So that worked out good. So we'll be leaving that, preparing that. There's some holes where they had the master cylinder and that stuff. You can see there's all kinds of numerous drilled holes. So I'll probably work on getting some of that cleaned up and maybe braced a little bit. Obviously, you know, when you got holes that are real thin near the edge of the metal, it worked for all these years, but we should probably do something a little more safe. This K-member also, I'm just noticing here, they had cut it and welded down in here. Since this has been blasted, I'm seeing all this kind of for the first time. So they shortened or welded this in here too. Not quite sure why. Maybe they just changed the angle of this leg to make it work. Not really sure. Back here we have an area that definitely needs to be repaired. This is where we're getting into the area where the door and where the door sill was. So down in here was the door sill area. That's about where the worst part of the car was right in this area where the roof of the building was leaking right down in and water was just sitting. So the frame in here is pretty thin, pretty much from here to here. So I'm gonna do like we did on the Stroll car. I'm just gonna cut a little section out there, fit it in, TIG weld it, finish it out, and it'll be basically invisible when it's done. So that'll help repair that thin area. Actually, back in here isn't too bad. It's pitted, but it's not like that where it's Swiss cheese. They added this brace here in the center that I think might have been for, we're not sure if it's for that like harness or roll bar that's in the back. I'm not quite sure, but they had this piece of angle iron that's in there. I am going to leave it in place because it is just part of the original frame. It's not hurting anything. All this back here is not in too bad a shape. All too typical, pretty much every old hot rod that's in a 32 to 34. They torched out on both sides for the dual exhaust. So the original pipe would have came in this nice round hole, but they just take the torch, cut that out, and fit an exhaust through there. So we're gonna pretty much leave that stuff alone. I'll clean it up just a little bit, but nothing too major. Everything here back isn't too bad on the car, on the frame. It's really not that bad. The only sections that I'm a little worried about once we flip the frame over is down in here. I could see that it's pitted. I can actually see pinholes. See my finger through there, through that pinhole. So this little area here that's super pitted because it was sitting on the concrete floor that was constantly wet. There may be some sections on this outer flange that I'm gonna have to cut out, put a piece of metal in, weld it in, and finish it out. Pretty standard work, but it is kind of time consuming and labor intensive. So I'm gonna get this thing, start working on these patches like I do with a lot of them. I'll just start at the front, work all my way back, try and get everything fixed up. Along the way, we're gonna try and look for the VIN number on this thing and try and find the VIN stamp on it. And hopefully by the end of this video, we'll get all the major repairs done and be ready to start assembling. All right. Oh, yes. Half an inch. Very simple, but that's all we need here. Something to brace the frame so that we don't have any issues. right, so got the last patches all welded in and blended everything. I ended up going back and just welding on the inside on some of those flanges that I re-welded just to make sure that we had full penetration on both sides, and then I could grind everything down and smooth it without any worry of making the weld too thin. Everything's cleaned up good. It looks good. Surprisingly, this didn't need a lot of repair on the top, but the bottom, you know, as you guys saw, I was replacing sections like this big in that flange where it was just sitting with the water and the moisture going right up to it, and it just made it so thin we had to replace those. But the rest of the frame is actually really solid. It's a little textured, if you will, or pitted, but it's not like thin and dangerous like some of those spots. So now that we got all this done, basically we can work on cleaning this thing up, getting it ready to paint, and some of the parts that we have, we're going to start putting new bearings and different things like that in it so we can put this underneath. I have a Columbia rear that's for a 34 Ford that was rebuilt that we're going to give a try to. So we have a bunch of that stuff that we need to work on in between the next video, but hopefully we're going to be painting this thing soon, painting some suspension parts, and this thing will be a roller in the next video or two, which will be really excited for getting this frame back together. Then we can start working on rust repair. Yay! Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. Catch you later.